Good afternoon, everyone. Hi again. My name is Guy Shiraki, and I serve as the President and CEO of the Chester County Chamber of Business and Industry, and I'm one of the co-hosts for this presentation, along with Susan Hamley. Susan's the Executive Director of the Chester County Conference and Visitors Bureau. This seminar today for restaurants is part of the ongoing effort of the Chester County Commissioners Initiative called Restore Chester County. There's a web page dedicated to reopening, restoring, and hopefully jumpstarting all of our businesses in all the industries across the county. Today, we're doing several Zoom webinars regarding the restaurant industry, knowing that there are unique opportunities, unique challenges that you face. I want to let you know a few things. First is that this is being recorded. We're doing this so that we can then post this later on the Restore Chester County website. So that folks can review it later. In addition, many of the documents you'll see today or referenced will be available at that Restore Chester County website. If you have questions or comments throughout, you can use the chat feature here on Zoom, and we will try to get to all the questions that are possible. If you're unable to get a question asked today, or you need additional information, or something occurs to you later today or a week, or frankly, even a month from now, you can use the email address that you'll find on the Restore Chester County site. It's pretty straightforward. It's business@chesco.org. Business@chesco.org. You can email that at any time, and there are a team of business, civic, elected officials, lawyers, financiers that are volunteering their time, serving on the County Commissioners Restore Chester County Task Force, that will be able to help you answer those questions. These questions are confidential. These questions, and the goal behind the whole initiative is to get you open and running. It's not a gotcha. You're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to ask for help, and we're encouraging you to do so. Today we'll have a presentation and then head on to the question and answer portion. For that, we have not only restaurateurs, but attorneys, business people, representatives from the community, Chester County's Economic Development Council to help with issues you may have regarding financing and startup. We also have some local elected officials that may help you with zoning or local code or compliance issues. Again, our objective as a team and the whole purpose of the task force is to help all businesses reopen. And we know the particular challenges for our restaurants. We know that many of you have been closed or operating at almost closed capacity. So we're very anxious to get you into green and get you up and running. So with that, I'm gonna go around to my co-host. Our co-host for this call is Susan Hamley of the Conference and Visitors Bureau. After Susan, I see that we're joined by Commissioner Josh Maxwell, so I'm gonna jump out of order. So Susan, sorry to do that. So before we go to Susan, and then Susan will introduce our guest, Commissioner Maxwell. And again, I mentioned to you the commissioners helped create this task force so that businesses could get up and running. Also that you'd have access to the information, regulations, and PPE material. So to ask Commissioner Maxwell if he had any comments he wanted to share with us today before we head on into the program. Commissioner? You may be on mute.
I certainly am. Appreciate that, Guy, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you for all you're doing to help get us open again. I know the county is trying to work hand in hand with our business community right now, knowing that we need to listen to our best and brightest and act responsibly to get Chester County open and our economy into a recovery phase. To that end, our restaurants are extraordinarily important to our way of life here in Chester County. We all want to get out and start visiting them as quickly as possible, and I hope this is a big step towards making that happen. I'm available to anyone on this call should they have any concerns or find a way that the county could be more supportive here moving forward. And thank you for everyone for participating in this important event.
Thanks again, Commissioner, and thanks for helping us get this initiative started, and all these different agencies and volunteers coming together to help. As we get ready to turn it over to Susan, I would also mention that our chamber belongs to an alliance of chambers here in Chester County. There are 9 of us representing different communities from Oxford to Phoenixville and back again. We're joined today by a number of the executive directors or CEOs of these different organizations. I see that we're joined by the CEO of the Downingtown Chamber as well as the Exton Chamber, and others may be joining us. And they're also a resource to all of you and all of us getting our economy restarted. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan, who's going to talk a little bit about restaurants and their importance to our economy, and she's going to turn it over then to our featured speaker. Susan, thank you.
Great, thanks, Guy. Glad to have all of you zooming in this afternoon to hear more about what green means and how to properly open indoors on Friday or whenever you choose to open. So I represent the Chester County Conference and Visitors Bureau, and our role is to promote this destination primarily to people who live outside the area, but also locals, to entice them to visit. Most tourism businesses, like restaurants, can't survive on business from just locals alone. So we need visitors to help recover as a whole. We're going to see even more intense competition as travelers decide where to take their wallets. And our tourism office will continue to advertise to leisure guests. We secure amateur sports tournaments, meetings, weddings, festivals. These are all activities that create overnight business for our hotels and that send people to your restaurants, caterers, breweries, wineries, etc. It's part of the experience when they come here. Dining is especially a big part of it. So the point is that all tourism segments are interdependent on each other. Everybody needs to create demand together, and that will influence the health of your businesses, as well as support jobs and economic impact for Chester County. So fully recognizing businesses like yours, when you're got your hands full with new operational challenge, I will just ask if your staff can work into the guest conversation, particularly with non-locals, suggesting reasons to stay another night or to come back and visit us again. Reasons like our incredible top-notch attractions, so that we're all helping each other and rise this. So to get this going, I'm happy to introduce Bob Raffetto. He will present some key points regarding opening in green before we get into answering questions that you're all posting in the chat room, and please do that. Guy will facilitate. So let's meet Bob. Bob Raffetto worked at Dilworthtown Inn since 1977. He started mopping the floors. Familiar story, I'm sure. He co-owned the Dilworthtown Inn, Blue Pear Bistro, and Innkeeper's Kitchen since 1991, and the Tommy just sold them in January 2020. Previously, Bob sold business computers for Hewlett-Packard to the local region, to companies like QVC, IBX, AmeriHealth, DuPont, AZ, and BNA. He's currently working with a group of 20 Delco Chesco restaurants to influence Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, Team Wolf, and others to help get them open. And I thank you so much, Bob. He generously offered his 100% support towards recovery of this important industry you all represent because it's part of his passion. So, Bob, you want to take it away?
Yes. Welcome, everybody. I'm Bob Raffetto, and I'm gonna start presenting some of our slides. All of these are available to you at a website that will be announced later, so you can get the slides. You miss some of the notes in the meantime. Anyway, the first slide, and I think the one that most people are interested in, is the green phase, which starts.
Bob, I'm going to have to ask you, please unmute. Sorry, I had to mute it because we had several folks did it. So I would ask everybody's cooperation. I know we're all triple tasking, but in order to really hear Bob and hear the question. So Bob, I'm sorry if you can unmute.
Here we go, I'm back. Can you hear me now? So let me get into the green phase, which starts this Friday the 26th. Key thing in this phase, and most of you I will assume are opened restaurants, but if there's a few that are not open, in the green phase, we get to open to 50%, which is wonderful. We still have the outside dining, and this slide that you see here on your screen just tells you what's open and what the current rules are. I will remind everybody, when I presented this to other restaurants, they didn't know that there was a phase after green, which was initially called phase out. That's what was normal long ago. Currently, there is another phase after green, nicknamed either dull green, light green, gold, and so there'll be another phase, and things will change. Because things are changing, as I go through this presentation, I will refer everyone to the several websites that are in the materials so that you can go get the most current information. Some of it changes weekly, some of it changes it twice a month. I just want to give you that tool so that you know where the information is. And those websites are the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, prla.org. I'm going to recommend everyone join that. It's for free, and they have a daily email and they have a weekly seminar. If you're like me, I spend 15 to 20 hours a week reading and researching what's out there. I know that's a lot of time. I bet most of you that have a restaurant don't have that kind of free time. And so the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association summarizes that down in an email and a once a week webinar. Great investment of your time, and it's free. Pennsylvania has many different websites to go to. The one that you'll see on the slide there is health.pa.gov. There's several others. You can Google them. That information changes, like I said, once a week, maybe every 2 weeks. Of course, the National Restaurant Association. There's a couple materials there that are useful. There are many posters and back office posters, front of the house, and customer slides that are available there. A lot of good information. It doesn't change very frequently at all. The CDC information, well, it changes daily. I've given the website where you can just go see what's new with the CDC material. You need some of this information, and you're going to be asking me why, because it's part of your planning that's required to be open. You have to refer to some of the CDC guidelines, so you've got that. And last but not least is the Restored Chester County website. The materials from today will be there, plus about 20 other poster slides, documents. They'll give you the tools to get started. When we have the actual location of that, we'll let everyone know, but the materials will be there so that everyone can work independent of us. The next question that everyone's asked me when I presented this to some 20 restaurants in Delaware County and a few in Chester County, they said, where's the revenue going to come from? Number one, food to go is here for the long haul. So if you're not doing food to go now, it's something you should look into, because with your interior limited to 50% of capacity, you won't have as much revenue as you want. So that's the first area for dining. Number two, drinks to go. The drinks have to be sealed, but everyone can do that. You just have to have a sign posted. We have the details for that in the attached material. Outside dining. A lot of outside dining going on now. In yellow, it will continue in the green phase, but you have to extend your premise. And there's information on the extension of premise. You get the approval instantly from the LCB, but you still have to work with your township, and some of the later speakers can tell you some of the details there. If you want to sell wine to go, this is an optional one. The wine extended premise program, that one costs about $2,000 to get into. Might not be your first go-to spot. And of course, as I just mentioned, the outdoor dining, you have to seek your borough or township approval about using the sidewalk or the streets or the parking lot if you're in a shopping center. So there are some rules that you need to follow there. The good news is indoor dining at green, 50% of capacity, maximum 250 people. But everyone's going to ask me, well, what about the weddings? Because we know we can make a lot of money doing weddings and larger events. There is a limit. One of those is 250 people. But for those large events, be it a funeral lunch, a wedding, baby shower, the rules keep changing. You have to stay current on that. I'm going to recommend the Pennsylvania Restaurant Lodging Association, their weekly meetings. They bring up the changes to those rules. That's a very dynamic area. So if you're a caterer, this obviously affects you a lot. If you depend on those large weddings and those things, again, those rules keep changing. And everyone asks about the bar. I want to set people at my bar. Right now, that type of service doesn't work because people aren't socially distant. There's some ways around it, but it's not really the thing that's intended. So as you'll see on the bottom of this slide, it says stay current. Join the Pennsylvania Restaurant Lodging Association every Wednesday, 11 a.m. It's free to join. And this information in one of the documents that we have was updated May 27th in Pennsylvania's Restaurant Industry Guidance. You can even Google it while we're talking. You can find it that way also. So Guy and Susan asked me to say, what are the key things to think about, or what are the key mistakes that I've seen at the restaurants that I've helped get open in the yellow phase? Number one was the restaurant promise. It's a sign to give your customers confidence that you're paying attention to the sanitation rules that we've always paid attention to, but the COVID-based sanitation rules about gloves, menus. That is one of the key things that the restaurant promises brings to light and gives your customers a little extra confidence. Number two, in all of the 5 restaurants I went to weekend before last, everyone had missed this. You have a form called the COVID-19 Safety Procedures for Businesses. You have to sign it and post it. Every one of my restaurants had missed that. So that's a must-see. And then from the NRA, there's posters for the front of the house, back of the house. From the PRLA, the Pennsylvania Restaurant Lodging Association, there are posters, information on barriers that you need to have. And the LCB has a few signs for the customers, like if you're doing the drinks to go, because you know they can't just drink them in the parking lot because that's an open container law violation. So a lot of good stuff. And again, at the bottom of this slide, you'll see where I have some references to some PDFs. You can Google those and you will get some of that material too, but it will be available on the Restore Chester County website. Step 2, this is where most of the people are 50-50. It's 6 foot socially distanced, not table to table, but the back of where a person's sitting to the next back of a person. So it's not tables being 6 foot apart, it's the people being 6 feet apart. Barriers, a lot of people miss this. There are no, you have to have the barriers for your cashier, like if people are coming in the front door, they're important. And between booths, if you have a booth scenario, you do need to have enough protection. The back of the booth is not considered good enough by itself. There's some rules about that, but we can talk about that later, or you can send us questions and I'll follow up with more details. Laws, rules, and guidance. You might ask, are these things Pennsylvania law? What's the enforcement of this? Well, the state is providing guidance to everyone. They realize that all of our businesses are different. You know, your layout might be a little bit different. So the key thing is they are flexible. That's why this is guidance, but don't push it like you're trying to skate by. If you make a mistake, you risk the closure of everybody, not just your own business. So everyone must follow the rules. And I've seen a couple of fellow restaurateurs like, oh, I'll just push that one. You have to stick with the program. Also, who's going to report you? Not only your guests, but even employees have been reporting other businesses for not following the rules. So a lot of people are still very concerned. Your way to measure that concern is to follow the rules. A lot of the material that we have that supplements today's presentation will tell you what the rules are. You don't have to do much work. And once you get the staff on board, it'll be a lot easier for you. Outdoor dining, that's where you're going to make your most money because you're going to have the largest addition to your restaurant right now. Number one, you'll have to consult your township or borough. Every area has a different set of rules you need to follow, like not blocking a sidewalk. You know, when you're using a parking lot, you have to have it all marked out. So you do, as the third bullet says, you need to contact your insurance agent to make sure you're covered for the additional area. And also the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, you can get the approval for your outdoor area. It's an instant approval. You go online, you fill it out. It doesn't cost you anything. You get the approval right away. But consult with your township, consult with your insurance agent. And the details for that are in the Pennsylvania's May 27th Restaurant Industry Guidance. All right, so what is the call to action? What are the kind of recapping what you need to do to save your investment of time and to get all this information? I still recommend join the Pennsylvania Restaurant Lodging Association. It's free. You get a daily email with the legislative updates and policy updates from Harrisburg. Wednesday at 11 a.m. they have an industry update, so hope to see you all tomorrow. Go and join. Melissa Bova does a wonderful job at telling you what's current, and she doesn't sugarcoat it. She tells you straight what do you need to do. Number 2 on that list, the posters and reference material. That's what I found everyone keeps missing, and it's the easiest part. Some of it comes from the Pennsylvania Restaurant Lodging Association. You can see the website there. Second comes from the Restore Chester County website. All the materials today and a lot of other signs and postage are there. Some of it comes from the NRA. It's there. I even have this Save Serve. Hopefully all of your employees are Save Serve certified. You're a certified food manager, so you're Save Serve certified. There's a bunch of materials, including cleaning recommendations for everybody there, from gloves for your bus staff to menus not being reused. A lot of that guidance is there from the Pennsylvania and from the NRA. You'll find it there. Also, I'm going to continue on here, but we'll show you the list of other materials. But with that, let me turn it over to Guy to do some questions and answers. We'll answer all of your questions. And if you do have confidential questions you want to ask, you can just email them to business@chesco.org, and we'll be glad to set up an offline discussion for you. Guy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob, very much. And as we move to the question phase, a few points. So one is, if you have questions, and some of you are beginning to populate the chat with it, we're going to go through those, but please feel free to add them. And if we don't answer the question in its entirety, please let us know. And again, as Bob said, you can follow up with us at the business@chesco.org, and we'll get back to you. Somebody will within 24 hours. For the question and answer portion, we're joined by several additional folks. So in addition to Susan and I, as I mentioned, there are other chamber executives. The executive director of the Downingtown Chamber and the Exton Chamber are with us. In addition, we're joined by Ernie Holland. Ernie himself is a township elected official, township supervisor in East Pikeland. Ernie wears a second hat. Well, he wears a lot of hats, but for today's call, he wears 2 hats. One is an elected official, but he's also the executive director of the Trade Association of the Township Officials. So, from Tredyffrin to Birmingham and back again, Ernie is the facilitator and executive director to coordinate the affairs of our townships across the county of Chester. We're also joined by Skip Ryan. Skip is an attorney. His firm is in Westchester, has helped a number of municipalities, including helping Westchester Borough for their upcoming arrangement on Gay Street. In another lifetime, you may recall that Skip, as a Chester County resident, and Skip chaired the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. So he has an insight into the liquor side of things as well. We're also joined by Mike Grigalonis. Mike is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of the Chester County Council of Economic Development. Mike and his team are the go-to place for when you're looking for to locate, expand, or grow, to train your staff. You're looking for a building, loans, grants, money for training. Mike and his team are the best place to go to learn those things and the ins and outs of how to keep you operational. So our hope is that the folks today assembled can answer your questions. And Bob, I'm going to throw this first one to you and to Skip as well. There are a series of questions that you may have seen in the chat surrounding the issue of bar seating and serving liquor in bars and how that all works. I'm going to ask you, and then if Bob to go first, and then Skip, you have something to add. Can we just walk through and clarify, so there's no misunderstanding, what can and cannot be done for bar seating and liquor service in the green phase?
So for the bar area, a normal bar in pre-COVID days was people sitting next to each other. That does not satisfy the social distancing requirement. That's why bars are not allowed. What people are starting to do is put a plastic barrier around people at the bar, but today sitting at the bar is not open as a way to serve people, but it probably will be, and that's where you'll see plenty of creative barrier designs for the bar being acceptable, not acceptable today, but acceptable maybe in a couple of weeks.
Skip, would you like to add that in terms of the regulations with bar service? And I believe you're on mute.
Bob is correct, but we know there's a difference between the COVID requirements and the LCB requirements. That the people that have had LCB approval for their bar to be open before COVID haven't lost that. So that is still there, but they have to balance it with the COVID requirements of social distancing right now, not because the LCB said so, but because the governor's edict said so. Bars are closed. I agree with Bob. They'll probably be opening soon, but there'll be some type of way of social distancing, either by glass barriers or some type of way to create distancing in a bar that normally was not pre-COVID.
So I'm going to suggest, since there's a number of questions on this, getting a little bit into the logistics of seating and service and counts and who's in a family and not. I think what I'm going to suggest is after this call, we'll huddle amongst the panel here, and I think we'll work on making sure that the information Bob's going to talk about again, that the information that's posted on the Restore site, that we have clear bullet points for this issue of the bar. So because there are rules under which you can sit at a bar in terms of spacing, and I think we want to, since there's so many questions, it's clearly something that we should delve further into. As to where you can sit and when you're sitting with a family and how far apart that is. So we want to make sure that it's accurate and up to date. So we'll huddle amongst ourselves and work on getting that up as part of the Restore site. There'll be a link, as you'll see now on Restore Chester County. There's a link for different industries, hotels, manufacturers. There's a link for restaurants. We'll make sure that there is a bullet or two for bar seating to give guidance. And then, as in all things that are posted on that site, we invite your feedback. There was a question about folks doing takeout and picking up food, as to whether the folks picking up can sit outside and eat. Is that possible? So, Guy's Restaurant, we sell whatever, and, Susan comes along and picks up a sandwich. Can she then sit outside and eat that sandwich at the restaurant?
The tricky part about that question was that they want to ensure that we have social distancing. So we don't want people to leave the restaurant and then break all of the social distancing rules outside. So while it's not strictly against the rules, it's not part of what they envision to keep up the social distancing. And Skip, I bet you could probably add a little bit more to that.
With regard to the Liquor Control Board?
Yes.
Well, obviously anybody can. I mean, you can go to Wawa tomorrow and buy a sandwich and go out to the park and eat it anywhere you want. That hasn't changed as long as social distancing is occurring, as Bob said. But there is a difference between buying a takeout meal with now the ability to buy alcohol at the same time and carrying that alcohol away from the premises that are licensed and sitting in a park or sitting on Gay Street on a bench and eating and drinking the alcoholic beverage, whether it be beer, wine, alcohol drink, whatever the case may be, because that wasn't licensed by the LCB. You can do what I consider to be takeout alcoholic beverages, but they have to be sealed in a container and not drunk off the premises, taken home and allegedly done there, but not somewhere else. So I think the restaurants will be very careful to make sure that they don't violate the LCB requirement if people start to carry their stuff and walk across the street and sit on a park bench on Gay Street or sit somewhere else in a shopping center and start to drink an alcoholic beverages and eat. That's really wasn't the reason for that. So be careful of that, because it could come back to you if they see that you're selling that way. That's what we're looking for, Bob?
Yes. And we'll get more information for Gina, Dio. You're the one that asked more about some of the bar regulations too. What's the next question there, Guy?
So the next is for Ernie. We discussed this on a prior call, but Ernie's our local government expert, as are some other folks, I'm sure. But Ernie, one of the things we talked about in the prior call, perhaps you could share, is each of these businesses is located in one or more municipalities. If they have a question about seating, lighting, noise, outdoor seating, who at the township should they call and talk to?
Well, I would start with the professional staff at the township, and if the township has, or the municipality has a manager, go to the manager. And if they don't have a manager, then generally the secretary is the on-site authority to talk with. So you can reach out to them. You can also reach out to the elected officials, although I would guide you to go to the staff that deals with things every day, and they're more up to date.
Okay, thank you. Again, one of the questions from earlier that may apply, and I'm going to reach out to Mike Rigolonis, who again is the COO of Chester County Economic Development Council. Mike, could you walk through some of the remaining avenues that folks may have to find either to get loans or grants, financial resources that may still be available, or you and your team can help guide them along?
Yeah, sure, Guy. Thanks. I think that the most notable one, and maybe the one that people don't know too much about yet because it was just announced about a week ago, is the $225 million grant fund that the Commonwealth announced. Those funds will probably, the application window figures to open sometime next week. I'm hearing the 29th, but that's not definitive yet. I should also take this time to plug a webinar very similar to this one that will happen Friday morning at 9 a.m. That'll provide full information from the folks that are actually designing and will be administering this grant program. This is a statewide pool of, there's two different programs of $100 million each, and then there's some $25 million that'll go to a couple different, but there's essentially $200 million available to small businesses. The main criteria are you need to have sales of $1 million, annual sales of $1 million or less, and this is not an or, it's an and, 25 employees or less. So if you meet both of those criteria, you're eligible and you can apply. There's again, $100 million for historically disadvantaged businesses, and then there's $100 million for quote unquote Main Street businesses. So a lot of you on here will probably qualify for at least one of those two, perhaps both. It will be an online portal that will be, the application will go through the website. It's a pretty straightforward, pretty lean application. So bear in mind, I want to set the appropriate expectations. It's not a guarantee. It is a statewide. I'm sure it'll be heavily subscribed. However, it is grant money, and it's not an onerous process, I don't believe. So I think it's worth taking a shot. So that would be the best avenue for grant money. There was, as you all know, there was a Chester County Main Street program, but those funds currently are exhausted. So that program did benefit 248 businesses, which was great, but that window is currently closed. I would just add generally that if you are looking to borrow money, now's a very good time. The SBA rates in particular are down to 2.5% fixed for 30 years. So if you have some larger capital expansion or equipment needs, things like that, borrowing rates are extremely low and attractive right now. So be a good time to do that as well. If that's something that you need. So again, reminder, Friday morning, 9 o'clock, be looking for the same channel that you found this information on this particular program. I'm sure you'll hear the same promotional information for this webinar on Friday. We'll give all that information on the upcoming grant program.
Thank you. And on a related topic, many of you have taken out or been considering the PPP loans that were available through local bank. Two things on that. One is there is still about $80 million left that can be borrowed. And this conversation has come up in other contexts. The average amount being borrowed of every one of the nearly $600 billion that's been allocated, the average loan is now about $27,000. Which means the recent loans that are being taken out are sometimes as small as $10,000 or even less. So if you still need, if you will, a bridge or a way to help keep you going through the summer when you're at 30% or 40% capacity, that may still be an avenue. And recall that most of that money can be converted to a grant. so that you may be in a position where very little to none of that money will be in a loan. Secondly, if you have that, if you do have a PPP and you have questions about compliance or converting it from a loan to a grant, you can reach out to us and we will get you. There's a group of lawyers and accountants who, again, are volunteering their time. We can be happy to help you with those things. Bob, a question from earlier, which would help here too, as I scroll through the next round of chats that have come in, and that is, can you walk us through the timeline we talked about earlier? So let's fast forward a week or 10 days from now, we're open at Guy's Cafe, and I learned that my cashier calls out sick, and the next day she calls back and says, I've tested positive for COVID. What chain of events follows next once an owner-operator has been told that one of the employees has tested positive?
Couple things to be wary of in that case. Number one, every day when your staff comes in, you should be taking their temperature with like an infrared thermometer. That's the first step. So when they call you back, because you're running a restaurant, and this has always been the case, a sick employee is not supposed to come to work. So that's still the same as before. But let's say they might have COVID or something else. There are a particular set of rules of what you need to do and follow. They're at the Health Department website, the Pennsylvania website, and the PRLA website. And I believe there was some materials on the Restore Chester County website too. You might recall where that is.
Yeah, that's on the industry section called restaurants. And in the drop-down list, you'll see a thing for what do I do if an employee has been, or someone with COVID has been on the premise, employee or otherwise. You'll also find that there's an English and a Spanish version of that as a PDF document that you can download and look at, but it covers the merged details of the health department, the CDC, so that they're all spelled out in one place for you to easily follow. There's also a link on the resource page for the technique of hygiene process that's prepared by the CDC to tell you how to do each of the things. And it's pretty simple. It's very straightforward. So that's out there for your use as well.
Ernie, I'd like to add to the important things that you brought up there. Say you're a caterer or you have a very large event. The rules require that you keep a list of who's dining at your establishment. Now, for just regular guests, you have reservations, and so you keep track of it that way. But for a large event, like say a wedding or a funeral or some event like that, the host is responsible for keeping a list and a way to contact all of those guests in case they get, or someone has COVID or that scenario happens. So I wanted to add that to what you were saying.
Yeah, great.
For clarity, can we just walk through again the issue of masks, just to hone in on that point? Who has to wear them? Who doesn't? What are the requirements, and how does that all work? Because that, again, they're general guidelines, and then certainly the configuration of one's restaurant or cafe may also dictate the realities of social distancing. So, Bob, can you walk through that? And then if Skip or others want to chime in, that would be great.
Yes. So for the masks, for your staff, I'm going to break it up: the front of the house staff, back of the house, and lastly, customers. For the front of the house staff, your bus staff, your waiters, your cashier, they all need to have masks. For the back of the house staff, one is not required to have a mask if it would make doing their work unsafe. When you're a chef or you're cooking in the back, you're sweating a lot, it's very hot in the kitchen, it's hard to breathe through the mask, that would be unsafe. So in that scenario, the cooks are not required to wear a mask. Now for customers, there's a sign, the Lodging Association has an NRA, says guests entering, you're required to wear a mask. They're required to wear a mask until they sit down and eat, not just come in and take the mask right off and wait till the food comes. They're supposed to have the mask on until. Some of the other rules are, if a person's not wearing a mask, it might be a medical condition that they have. So there might be a legitimate reason why they don't have to wear a mask. And we're not the mask police. And with that, let me pass it over to Skip maybe you can add some more about the mask and some of those requirements. You're muted, Skip.
Bob, you said about everything. The only thing I can add, and we talked about this earlier today, is that I get concerned if a restaurant at least doesn't post what the requirements are, attempts to create a social distance by having somebody outside reminding people to social distance. The other day, I noticed a lot of people in Westchester that would come in town and see friends that they haven't been with in a while because of the coronavirus and the issue of being shut-ins, and going over and starting to hug people and do whatnot while they were in line waiting to be seated or either to get takeout. That to me is going to be an issue as we open up, because I think that if you don't at least post, you can't require people to do that. Obviously, it isn't a crime if they do it, but I think you just have to have polite reminders, either by an employee out there reminding them of it, posted on the wall that this is the requirements at this point in time. If somebody does come down with corona and a difficult thing happens to them, then I think they're going to look back on how it all happened, and we might see litigation like that, similar to what you see when the LCB got involved and granted licenses, and then somebody was accused of over-serving somebody at a restaurant. So I don't know whether that'll happen, but I think you have to at least show that you gave people the understanding as to what the requirements are now and ask them politely to do it. Can't stop it, but at least make sure that you are giving them the notices.
I'll throw in another, another item, Guy, and that is just before this meeting, I got a notice from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that they will now be distributing, I don't know prices or any of that nature, to commercial enterprises as well as government entities. So I've got somebody working now to research that and get it posted on the Restore Chester webpage, and hopefully we'll have it up tonight.
One of the topics that came up on the earlier call, but also has come up in the context of other retailers when we've done calls with different market segments across the county, and that is, again, not to try and heap more work on any of you, because that's the last thing we want to do, but a suggestion that you define in a way that conforms with your restaurant, with your cafe, with your place of business, a way of communicating through signage or through your social media, whether you use it through your web page, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but giving some sort of description to your customers of what to expect when coming in, how you're using the restrooms, how one goes up to the bar and gets a drink, or what's served tableside, what may have changed since the last time we were there. Because we recognize for many of you, you may be greeting customers for the first time face-to-face since the first week in March, and you may be greeting some customers for the first time, period. So the suggestion that's come up in many places, where think of this, for example, I don't go off topic, but, was like jewelry stores and clothing stores, having to walk their customers through how things might be a little different than the last time we were there. We would encourage you, not from a legal and not from a compliance, from a customer service, from a consumer confidence, that you may want to have signage or some way to help prepare your customers to understand what they may be seeing. I just wanted to go back to something we talked about earlier, and that was sort of the drinking and the food, because this keeps coming up. Again, someone walks in, they get a sandwich or they get some takeout entree, and they buy beer, and they walk outside and sit down on your patio and open it up. What's your responsibility as the restaurant owner or operator when that occurs? Is that permitted? Is it not permitted? And what's your obligation when someone does that? And how might that have changed since the way you might have had to deal with it in January, but now particularly with outdoor seating? What would be the responsibility that we would want to offer as guidance?
Your outdoor area, you would have already had license. So in that aspect, there's no change. It's when they walk to an unlicensed area and you can license more of your, say, parking lot with a PA LCB extension of premise, right? So that's one change that you could have made it larger. Two, when they take drinks outside, if it's an unlicensed area, that would be an open container if they open it up. So there's a change there there's no limit on the amount of to-go drinks, but they have to be in a sealed container for them to take. And there's particular laws about how much alcohol, and they can't have wine in it. There's some rules there, and that's all in the PLCB guidance materials. Joe, Skip, you want to add some more to that?
No, I agree with you. I mean, takeout drinks or takeout drinks are supposed to be sealed. Go home and drink it. I mean, it's where you want that special martini, but you can't get it while you're sequestered, so you are now able to go get it and take it home. It's not to take over to one of the parks and sit on the bench. Public drinking is still not permitted in Pennsylvania. I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying it isn't. So that becomes a difficulty. If it's your premises, I didn't say it earlier, but I did say it in one of the earlier seminars. I personally think that barriers as to what your licensed area is important. If you're in Westchester and Westchester agrees to give you part of Gay Street or part of the sidewalk, and obviously there has to be an opening for public sidewalk where the pedestrian still can walk through. The more you careen that off where people can't come and sit, the better off I think you would be at that point in time, because it becomes very difficult to suggest to move somebody if they think it's a public sidewalk area or a park bench that they can use, or the seat or a table that they can sit in that is public property. So you're going to get sent, if you go to the LCB, they're going to want to know what you want licensed. You're going to make a plan of that or a picture of that to show what you're going to have licensed. And the more you barrier that off once you get approval, the least likely that would happen.
There is questions that have come up in the prior call, but also questions came up in other segments. Again, something that may be applicable, and that's the issue of temperature checks. Can we talk about that, what's required, and how that can be handled safely and appropriately?
For employees, you should take their temperature every day, get an infrared thermometer. You know, people like Cisco and some of your other providers have them handy, probably get them on Amazon too. You need to do that every day, and that's just a way of showing that you're following the rules to provide a safe environment.
And the CDC recommendation is that all employees take their temperature at home, and if it exceeds 100.4, they should not report to work.
I will tell you that in some other businesses outside of restaurants, where we've discussed it with retailers and manufacturers, that many of them have a protocol in place similar to what Bob and Ernie have said, but particularly with Ernie, it's that each day there's a designated staff person, or when you first open your computer, there's a way for you to say, hi, I'm Guy and I'm checking into work, at ABC Widget Factory, and I'm certifying that I checked my temperature's below X, and that I'm prepared to do that. Again, some businesses are doing it where you have to report to an officer, or whoever it may be, and tell them that, or you have to click something at home, or it's an app, but there's a way of conveying, I've done that self-examination, and let you know that I'm okay. The alternative is for you to do it at the location. Issue came back, we've had a few of them about this issue of a count of 250 and how you deal with that. Two ways. One is, does outdoor change it? And secondly, do you count your staff amongst it? So if you're at Guy's Catering Hall and you have a staff of 50, does that mean I can only book an event with 200 guests, or am I allowed 250 guests? So how do we handle that? And secondly, does having an outdoor facility, a number of catering facilities or restaurants have indoor, outdoor? How do you count that in terms of the total count?
So indoor is separate from outdoor. Obviously, you can extend your preference to a larger area. The count is 250, and I need to double check on whether your staff is included. We discussed it on the PRLA call last week, and I believe the staff was not included in the 250, but you can imagine if you had 100 staff people for 250 guests, that probably would not go over so well. So I need to look a little bit more into that. If someone's really interested and wants to know, join the PRLA webinar tomorrow. It's at 11 o'clock. There's a related question about dancing I saw in the chat room. 2 weeks ago, dancing was not allowed in a large family event. And the trade-off is they think a wedding where people are related is different than say a car show that would be outside. So hopefully that gives a start on the answer to that question.
Perhaps
Hey,
someone
Guy.
smarter than me can explain what social distancing dancing is, but I'm not sure what that is.
Guy and Bob, do you guys mind if I add something on the showing up to work issue?
Sure. Fire away, sir.
So we've added, and all restaurants should be able to do this with their Aloha terminal or their Micros terminal. When our employees clock in, it pops up with 3 or 4 questions on about 3 different screens. Number 1, have they had a fever since they last worked? And then number 2, have they been exposed to anybody with COVID? And then has the manager done a temperature check on them? So they have to click that to even be able to clock in, which then helps certify that your employee is certifying that they have not had a fever, that they have not been exposed to somebody with COVID, and that the general manager has taken their temperature for that shift. We find that pretty helpful because all that information stays electronically filed. So if you ever have an issue, you can say, you know, Mary clocked in and she said she didn't have a fever. She said she hadn't been exposed to anybody with COVID, and she said that her temperature was checked. So that could be something useful for the health department if they come in and check on your procedures. Pretty easy to do too, just on your punch-in screen.
Thank you, Dave. We're going to go around to each of the speakers who've presented, and I'm going to first start with Ernie. And before we get to Ernie, just want to let you know a few things. One is, again, you can reach us through, as a reminder, through the business@chesco.org. Second is that information will be available on the Restore Chester County website. If you have not been there, you will see it is a host of information from the Department of Health, CDC. There is a litany of places to buy PPE materials or have your facility, your restaurant clean. We have done a private chat amongst those of us on the call. We are going to update and make a point of making sure that we walk through an FAQ on this issue of bars. We want to make sure that what we post is 100% accurate. So we'll put together a few questions and try and get that up in the next 24 hours and make sure that what we put is signed off by the lawyers and the operators and the government officials. So that will be up there. Again, as was alluded to earlier, there's an ongoing series of seminars presented through Restore Chester County on a variety of issues, so you continue to keep updates there. With that, I'm going to go to our presenters to see if they have a final comment or question, and just to help them prepare, I'm going to go to Bob. I'm sorry, going to go to Ernie, and then Mike, and then Skip, and then I'll turn back to Susan and Bob. So Ernie, you're up first.
I think we've covered everything, Guy, that I have on my list, just to make sure that if you have not had outdoor dining before, you need to check with your municipality to make sure that it's allowed, or there is a way to get an exemption to allow it. So make sure that you do that, and check the website, restorechestercounty.org. There's a ton of information out there, and hopefully it's been organized in a way that as a restaurateur, you could look at it and see the key items for you coming from all the different sources. The goal was, don't send you to 6 different websites to find out the information, send you to one and put it all there together. So we've had a great team of interns that have worked on that, and they did a super job. And that's my point.
Thank you, Ernie. Going to turn it over to the end. Mike Rigolonis from the Chester County Economic Development Council. Mike?
Yeah, just real quick, Guy. I put it in the chat. I didn't mention this website, but it's pabusinessgrants.com. I'd recommend, if you're interested in pursuing those grants, keep an eye on that. They'll put all of the latest information, and we'll be pushing it out as well. But if you really want to actively monitor it, it's pabusinessgrants.com. And again, it's in the chat, so you can pick it up there. So other than that, thanks to Guy and Susan for pulling this together, and I'll go back on mute.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks again. Remember, you can reach out to them at the Economic Development Council for all sorts of information regarding the financing and space, among other expertise areas. Skip, any final thoughts you'd like to share with this group that they should be aware of or thinking about as they prepare to reopen or expand their opening?
Well, I guess the one thing we didn't mention today, this afternoon rather, is the fact that if you are thinking about outdoor dining, Bob had said it earlier that the LCB will grant immediate approval. That immediate approval, and they told me, the chairman of the LCB, Tim, told me that it would be probably no more than 2 days. So immediate approval to the LCB might be 2 days, but 2 days to them is immediate approval, number one. Number two, make sure the application is complete. If you're in the borough or if you're in a municipality that permits it and it's on municipality property or public property or PennDOT streets that are being shut down, make sure you get approval from the municipality that you send up to the LCB with your application. They will not approve it without knowing the municipality is aware and approves your ability to expand into the public space. And if you're in a shopping center and you're expanding into the landlord space, you will need something from the landlord to state that you are doing that as well to ensure that the LCB grants immediate approval because the application is complete. The more you get bogged down in the red tape where they ask for this and then you send it back, and if you need any help, just give me a call and I can make a couple phone calls if you get bogged down. But if you get bogged down, you will get bogged down because of the application being suggested that it's not complete and them asking for more material. So overkill the application.
Thank you, Skip. Appreciate it. And again, I'm now going to turn it back to our co-host, Susan Hamley from the Conference and Visitors Bureau, and then to Bob for any final thoughts on subjects we may not have covered. So, Susan?
In the interest of time, I'll just let you know we do all emphasize with you and your business and what you're going through and sincerely want to help. So any questions, requests, anything that we can do, please reach out to us. We wish you well and can't wait to visit you again in sight.
Bob?
All right. I want to share just one document that's one of many that is on the website with the materials. This one document tells you all the different websites that we talked about very quickly today, the CDC, the NRA, Pennsylvania PRLA. So that's there. Also the list of materials and where they came from. The one that came from the PRLA, the LCB, there's the wine cocktail to go information or cocktails to go. There's also the employee that doesn't come back to work. That form's over there too. So all of these forms are right there along with Save Serve signs, making it very easy for you to go to one place and see that information. And I want to give you one last piece of good news. I'm going to share one more set of details with you. And this is from SIP Science. But this just shows you, if you look at the left, the strongly agree and agree, that's how many of your customers want to come back and see you and be with you again. On the far right, there's the people that are worried about sanitation or whatever it might be. You're not going to get them back right away. So in order to succeed, here's the customer attitudes. Make sure that your staff is staying current with the rules for COVID, wearing gloves, all that good stuff, because that's what will turn customers off. This came from a survey of like 2,000 or 2,500 customers. So a lot of good information. This is all on the Restore Chester County website, so you can watch it in detail and get all of that information. And with that, Guy, I pass it back to you.
Thank you to Bob, to Ernie, Mike, and Skip for your guidance. Again, as a reminder, information will be on the Restore Chester County site. You can certainly reach out to any of our individual organizations and the other chambers from the Chester County Alliance of Chambers that may be with us. Again, on this issue of bars, we're going to huddle because I will tell you that it's something that's come up, but I will tell you that while we have been on this call, I have looked at 3 different sites and seen 3 different guidances. So we are going to get at what we consider the definitive, clear answer that is in plain language, but that we get a sense from our attorneys and regulators is right. We will get that posted, and unbeknownst to my communications director, she's about to learn that we will send an email to everyone and let you know that that information is available once it's live. So we'll work on doing that, try and get you clear, definitive answer on the bar seating and the bar service area to remove that. But again, I want to thank you and appreciate Bob, Susan, Ernie, Skip, Mike, all of whom are volunteering their time. And just to give you a sense, you know, the governor announced we're going to green. As that was happening, Bob stepped forward and said, I'm available. So Bob literally has done almost nothing else. And I would tell you, Susan and I could vouch that Bob has done nothing else the last week, but send us slide decks, PowerPoints, notes, and opinions to get ready for this moment, to digest the volunteers' time. And he's been available for all of these calls and the follow-up. So very appreciative. As you know, throughout this COVID matter, there have been dozens of people who volunteered their time and money. Many of you have cooked and prepared for first responders and done things of that nature. So Bob is one of the many Chester County residents who stepped forward to volunteer, and we're grateful for that. I would echo what Susan said. We wish you all well this weekend, whether you're opening for the first time or expanding your services. By the way, if you have the time, take some pictures, post them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, tag all of our groups. Help us tell your story that you're reopened for business so we can encourage people from the county and the region to go and enjoy dinner, breakfast, or lunch with you. We wish you all the best. Please follow up with questions, comments, and good news, and we will get you the bar information and any other questions you share with us. Thanks so much for being with us, everyone. Have a great afternoon and have a fantastic reopening. Take care.